Hi, and welcome to Living My Fest Life, a podcast about festivals, fairs, events, and experiences, everything from the nationally known to the local obscure. I am your host, Collette, and today is a very special episode where I am solo because I want to talk to you about Woodstock. It is the 50th anniversary of this epic festival, and so much has happened since then, but it's still so relevant today. So I'm just going to jump right in.
I'm living my best life.
Okay, so let me paint you a picture here. It's 1968. All right, we're at the height of the Vietnam War. This means that your older brother, your son, this means that everybody that you go to school with, or even you yourself, if you're at age male, can get a card in the mail that says you are going to be sent to another country with very little training to fight, whether or not you agree with it or not. And that was the reality. And I don't think we've ever had to deal with that in my lifetime. On top of that, you have peacemakers like Martin Luther King, who is fighting for civil rights, at the same time assassinated. Then you have Bobby Kennedy, who is speaking out against the Vietnam War. Someone else who's trying to bring about change. That person is assassinated. So you have a whole body of people who are just feeling like they're not being listened to, that there is a machine driving this country in a direction that they don't want it to go to. And one of the few things they can turn to at this time is music. I feel like this is, we can relate right now. It's 2019. We're still seeing, with, the Me Too movement and Brett Kavanaugh still being appointed. Are we being listened to with Black Lives Matter and police not being prosecuted in some of these cases where, we feel like we're still not being listened to? Today, currently, the Amazon rainforest is on fire, and it's like, what are we doing about that? There are so many people who don't feel like their voices are heard, and they have these concerns, and what we can do is go out and march and can protest. But what else can we do? I hope I've correctly set the tone. I mean, it's not super parallel to what we're doing right now, but the similarities are definitely staggering. I mean, it's all about control, really. It's the way the government is controlling what you put in your body, what you do with your body, the wars that we're in, what we do with our economy. And then there's these people who feel helpless and not listened to. And then on top of that, the sadness of the deaths and, the hope that you have clinging onto it. I don't want to get too political, but I'm setting the stage here. So flash to Woodstock, New York. It's about an hour from New York City. It's an artist community. And two hippie guys and two business guys decide they want to build a music studio there. They think this is a great way for artists to come record new music at this, political time. And then they think, well, why don't we think bigger than that? Why don't we put on a music festival? By the end of 1969, people were searching for an escape, and the way they found that was through music. I mean, these musicians were singing about the war. They were singing about love and peace. They were singing about the confusion that brought it all. They were singing about drugs, which is what a lot of people turn to in this case. And, it's illegal, and I'm not, for every type of drug and an advocate, but I can certainly see why people with the reality that they were facing would turn to some kind of alternative method of coping just to get out of their head for a little bit or trying to deal with what was going on. I'm not saying that's a great thing. I'm just saying it is what it is, and I kind of understand why they would be doing it. So the organizers said this is something that we definitely need. We need to have a festival. It's going to bring all these people together, and it's going to serve a purpose. I mean, this is actually serving a purpose for those people. This is not this is not the Fire Festival, which none of us need. You know what I mean? None of us need Ja Rule on, Pablo Escobar Beach with Instagram models. None of us need that, but this was actually something that they felt they needed. They did not actually have it in the town of Woodstock. They had it in the town of Wallkill, which is a little bit ways from Woodstock. And they said, hey, we're going to have a 3-day rock and jazz festival, and we expect about a crowd of 20,000 people. So they brought in Mel Lawrence, and he was supposed to design the infrastructure of the festival. He's like, okay, we'll have fences here. We'll have toilets over here. Here's some water. This is how we can communicate with police. And so they actually called it an Aquarian Exposition in Woodskill. And it just became known as Woodstock, notoriously. How they planned the bathrooms was Mel would go and he would go to like a stadium and be like, okay, how many people use the bathroom? And he would have like a stopwatch and he would like count how many people go in. And he's like, okay, times 20,000, that's what we expect. Next, they booked the bands. They couldn't get Bob Dylan. Bob Dylan was like huge folksy at that time, but he also said that he hated hippies, which I always thought was very confusing because all of his music just spoke to the souls of hippies. But once they booked The Who and Hendrix, it was kind of like Wayne stock, you know what I mean? If you book them, they will come. And they ended up with, Creedence Clearwater Revival, Grateful Dead, Janis Joplin, Jefferson's Airplane, Santana, The Band, Crosby, Stills, Nash, Iron Butterfly, Moody Boo. I mean, they had all of these huge bands of the time, and what they would do is they advertised via, like, underground newspapers. I mean, this would be like hearing about something on Instagram or Reddit or something that you think is exclusive yours at the time. You know, it's not going to be covered in the mainstream media. So they really advertised in these really grassroots ways. And so it began. They are selling tickets. People are excited for this 3-day festival. And oh gosh, you get to spend the night. And how much fun is this going to be to come together for peace and love? And then the Concerned Citizens Committee of Wallkill gets their panties in a twist, and all the women with their librarian glasses and beehive hairdos come out to the courthouse to say, no, we don't want this. You know, they're over there already setting up the festival, installing electric. They have hundreds of kids coming in working, and the kids look like hippies, and they don't like that. Oh my God, no, not here, not with us. So all of a sudden, boom, an ordinance passes. They cannot have a gathering of more than 5,000 people. So 5 weeks out from the festival, they begin to scramble. So here's a name I want you to remember. Here comes Max Yazgert, right? And this guy is like a hardcore Republican, but he believes in personal freedom. And he's also a successful dairy farmer. And he comes along and says, hey, I'm in Bethel, New York. Here's some farmland that I have. Like, you can use this for your festival. Like, what? A cool guy. Just really coming in with his cape, standing with his hands on his hips, just paving the way. So now they have 5 weeks to scramble, build a whole new fence, build a whole new stage, redesign the infrastructure around the whole place. Meanwhile, ticket sales are almost up to 100,000 people. The whole town is all walking around going, there's not going to be 100,000 people here. And by the way, don't buy that guy's yogurt anymore. Fuck that guy. He likes hippies or whatever. So very controversial, but they're bringing in all these people. And 3 days before the festival, they have half a fence and like half a stage. So they're like, okay, if we don't finish the fence, there's not a way to like really take tickets and get this paid for because people could just sneak in. Also, but like if we don't have a stage, our acts won't perform and we'll probably get sued. Let's just finish the stage is what they decided on. Good call on that one, I think, but we'll see how it turns out. So it's the day of the festival and thousands of people start showing up. I mean, they are lined down the street in traffic. These are the most people you've ever seen in the same place at the same time. I mean, they took over this town and they're all out in the middle of this field. And the fence wasn't up. So some people came in without tickets and, you know, the festival promoters, the people putting this on is like, well, we can't really ask them to go out, come back in with your ticket. So at one point they make the conscious decision to make an announcement that says, look, I guess it's a free festival now because your experience here is more important than us making money. And that just kind of solidifies the whole spirit of the festival at that point. They had been concerned with security, and at that point there had been a festival in Atlanta that had gone wrong, a festival in Miami that had gone wrong. Violence had broken out at both of these festivals, and they thought, we need to make sure the spirit of this festival stays intact the whole time so people don't want to get violent, and it will never come to that. And I think that them having made that announcement was a big part in why this festival went off the way it did. So it is so crowded that the acts are coming in late. I mean, they can't show up because they can't get through the traffic. So finally, Richie Havens shows up, and they're like, Richie, we know you're not scheduled to go on yet, but we need you to go up right now. And he's like, and they're like, also, we're going to need you to play until someone else shows up. And he's like, So Richie Havens plays for like 2 hours. He's doing like 5 encores, and everybody's like digging him. The festival is going great. And they're like, okay, like play one more. And he's just like, literally, he's like, I got nothing in the tank. So Richie Havens makes up a song on the spot. And let me tell you, the lyrics are kind of like what you would think a song made up on the spot is. So the song's called Freedom. And the lyrics are freedom, 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 freedom. But it's awesome. He's creating a song as it goes. And this is how he creates the song right there live in front of all of these people, just, feeling the music with him and everybody connecting in this way. You go, Richie Havens. So eventually they start to helicopter other acts in, and this is the folk day. They had 250,000 people show up the first day. They end the night with Joe Baez. It's a beautiful folk day, and then the people go to sleep. So there's people camping out in tents. Well, the freaks come out at night. And in the morning, you see people bathing in the river, and then there's nudity, and then there's shopping at the various sites. And did I mention that there's a commune on site? A commune of pig farmers, or they called them hog farmers, led by a guy named Wavy Gravy. And they had volunteered to be the security for the event by saying, hey man, calm down. We're all in this together. And they got paid $18,000 for that. So day 2 was the rock day, and they have 400,000 people show up. They're giving out snow cones, people can buy pot, they got all the great rock acts coming out. Meanwhile, this is where the drugs start getting really heavy. They have these things called freak out tents in the back where people are coming in on acid, freaking out, saying they're going to die, having bad trips. And basically, Wavy Gravy and his compadres are taking care of everybody. And then as soon as someone would stop their freak out, another person would come in and they would say to that person who just freaked out, hey man, how about you help us out now that you've been through it? So it was really a community effort at that point. But, they had a lot of medical issues this second day too, because, you have this many people, you're going to have sicknesses, you're going to have minor injuries. So they really had to kind of watch out for each other, and they did have police and ambulance presence kind of watching throughout. So at this point, the outside world starts to pick up on what's happening inside the festival. And unfortunately, there are 6 casualties at this time due to overdosing or people not taking their medicine properly. You gotta remember, this is before cell phones, People would wander off and get lost, and, someone else has their bag full of their insulin or whatever, and you can't just text someone to meet up. So they actually started... what they would do is they created their own little information booth. They would put Post-its and sticky notes and pieces of paper on with notes, and people could come try and check for their friends. They also would go backstage with a piece of paper, and in between the acts, they would make announcements like, hey, everybody, if your name's, Charlie, your cousin Ben is sick, so meet us backstage, or so-and-so call home. Your mom keeps calling the festival asking for you. So, and that's how they kind of got news back and forth with each other. And it's kind of cool to hear about this, since we have, cell phones, we take these things for granted. But at one point, the U.S. Army flies in 45 doctors because of the illness and injuries, and they volunteer their time to kind of help aid the festival. Another beautiful thing that happened was, after a while, they ran out of food. The trucks couldn't get in to bring any more hamburgers or hot dogs or whatever because of the traffic. So literally, they had no food left at the festival. And when the news media heard about this, the community and residents of the town started making sandwiches, started boiling eggs, started cleaning out their pantries, olives, condiments, crackers, and they put them on helicopters and they sent them to the festival so that the people attending could have food. The people at the hog commune, they started cooking and serving. Everybody was just sharing. You know, they would open up a can, they would pass it around the crowd, and people were getting by due to the generosity of the community around them and their selflessness and the selflessness of the people inside to not, take these rations and hoard them for themselves. They were all about sharing. I mean, if you think about now, it kind of reminds me of Burning Man, which we talked about on the podcast before, everybody bringing gifts. I mean, this is definitely the anti-fire festival. They have a styrofoam cheese sandwich and everybody's bitching about it. This was really beautiful. So night 2 is epic. Everybody catches their second win from the food. Janis Joplin plays. It's just an amazing night. And they go to sleep again. And then at 6:30 in the morning, the music starts again. And everybody's just like, can we not? I mean, if you've ever been, have you ever been at a slumber party and you have to spend the weekend in someone's house? Like on Sunday, you're like, I'm kind of tired of you people, right? Just let me sleep in. Let me have my space. There's nowhere to get away. So they continue all through Sunday. And what I think brings everybody back to reality is that Max comes, the farmer, and he wants to speak to this crowd. I mean, these people have decimated his farm at this point. There are no crops going to grow there for a while. And he comes out, and this Republican farmer just says, hey, I just want to say, I think that you guys have proven something to the world, that you can have a fun festival for music and it just be that. And I applaud you for it. And then the crowd goes wild. I mean, this guy's amazing. And it just proved that they set out to do everything that they wanted to do at that point. And they had fun while doing it. And they maintained order with the peace. Oh, but then Sunday, here comes the rain. And this is an epic downpour to the point where people were like, are we all going to get electrocuted by this? You know, the rain came down like Hilary Duff singing on the Laguna Beach soundtrack. I mean, this thing was an epic storm, and there was no place for these people to go. They couldn't just go inside. They couldn't go inside their tents. They were getting poured on. So it became a giant mud pit, and everybody's having fun once they can deal with it. But at the end of Sunday night, the crowds really thinned out. Something magical did happen, though. It was the first time Crosby, Stills, and Nash sang together was at Woodstock. So that was a beautiful magic moment. But Jimi Hendrix famously was the headliner, and he got paid what would be the equivalent of $200,000 in today's money to headline. And he said, I'll be damned if anybody goes on after me. Well, they had been running so far over time that Jimi Hendrix ended up going on at 8:30 on Monday morning. Now, I remember when I was a little girl in 5th or 6th grade, and I went over to my neighbor's house, and they played me the Woodstock soundtrack. And I remember Jimi Hendrix playing the Star Spangled Banner on the electric guitar the first time it was done, and how powerful it was, and how ingenious it was, and how hard everybody told me it was. I didn't know anything about guitar at the time. But that was definitely an iconic moment. I mean, this is a time when patriotism was at an all-time low because of the war, and here we have the Army flying in doctors and Jimi Hendrix playing the Star Spangled Banner on the electric guitar, and it really just kind of solidified another sense of community, as Americans as well. Americans who wanted this peace. And thus, Jimi Hendrix ended with one of the most, notorious acts of all time, one of the greatest rock performances that ever happened. Let's see, in total, 32 artists performed at the concert. The promoters were bankrupt by the end of the event, but in all, it was a turning point for the United States when this age of counterculture became so relevant and continued on to, people began emanating festivals like this all across the world. I mean, this kind of set a standard for these long weekend festivals that really had a mission. So I hope you enjoyed learning a little bit more about Woodstock on the 50th anniversary of the festival. If you have a festival idea, please send it to festlifepodcast@gmail.com. Special thanks to Phil from Mi Compadre for doing the editing for the show. And get out there and see some festivals this year.